Hello everyone, and welcome to the Rita Dickerson Detroit Black History Channel. I'm Rita Dickerson. The upcoming Berry Gordy family video is one in a series of videos which chronicles Black history around Detroit's Cultural Center from 1920 to 1970. This video primarily covers the period between 1936, when the Gordy family moved to 5139 St. Antoine, and the incorporation of the Motown Corporation in 1960. Use of any copyrighted material is permissible as fair use under Section 107 of the 1976 Copyright Act, and you can subscribe to this channel down below. In this photograph, you see Berry Gordy Sr. and his wife Bertha when they had moved from Georgia to Detroit's west side in 1923. By this time, they had 3 children, all of which were born in Georgia. In this 1935 photograph of family celebration, you see Pop Gordy's mother standing near him with a white package in her hand. It was during a celebration of her 75th birthday. You see Berry Gordy in the lower left section of the photograph with his head in his hands. He mentions in his autobiography, To Be Loved, that the name that a child is given affects that child's self-confidence and self-concept and how people treat him. And he felt that because he was named after his father, that he was special and he was the chosen one, because 2 boys were born ahead of him and neither one of them was named after their father. So he grew up feeling special. And by the time in 1936 that they moved to Detroit's Cultural Center area, all 8 children had been born. From Fuller at the top, who was named after their mother's maiden name, to Berry Gordy, the number 7, and you see him at the bottom. In this 1938 photograph taken of Berry on the left and his brother Robert on the right, you can see the self-confidence evident in his stance. They both attended Balch Elementary School, which was also on St. Antoine, and it was just down the street from them. Around the same time as the last photograph, Berry climbed atop of a street sign at Farnsworth in St. Antoine, as if he was on top of the world at the intersection where they lived. I made a ceramic wall plaque of that image, and around him on the left you have names of different Motown acts and some of the labels. Also, in the center of the plaque, you see a replica of the 1940 census, which shows the ages of everyone at that time. Berry was 10 years old. And on this side of the plaque, you see some of the family businesses that the Gordys had. Pop Gordy had bought a commercial building at St. Antoine in Farnsworth. It had 2 flats upstairs where the family lived, and room for 4 businesses downstairs. Their family grocery store was called the Booker T. Washington Grocery Store, and Pop Gordy is on the right. You also see they also had a printing company that Fuller, Esther, and George ran. And there was also a construction company, and you see Pop Gordy on the left with Berry Gordy in the upper right, and Robert in the middle. Mother Gordy, after she raised her 8 children, she went back to school. She was formerly a school teacher in Georgia, and she attended Wayne State University, University of Michigan, and received a degree in business. She also sold real estate, and she and her brother started the Friendship Mutual Insurance Company. The Gordys lived 1 block west of the famous and infamous Hastings Street, which was 1 block west or to the left of Hastings Street that you see above. In the upper left-hand corner, you see a church steeple, and the Gordys would live about 7 blocks from that location. These pictures that I'm going to show you were taken just prior to Hastings, Brevard, and Russell being demolished to build the I-75 expressway. Now, Hastings Street was, in the day, there were grocery stores, movie theaters, pawn shops. At night, there were nightclubs, and just everything on Hastings Street. In this picture, you see another family gathering, and you see Barry as a teenager. He's on the right. He was about 15 years old and attending Northeastern High School here on Grande between Warren and Hancock. I also attended the same high school much later, and I lived about 7 blocks from the high school, whereas he lived about 1.5 miles from Northeastern. There was a park in front that I would enjoy walking through to get to the high school, and you'll see the pictures of the park here. Bobby Rogers of the Miracles would for a time attend the same school. Also, Mary Wilson attended Northeastern High School. Barry also would go as a teenager to the Greystone Ballroom on Woodward between Canfield and Willis, and they could only go on Monday nights because that's when blacks were allowed to attend. And I remember my older brothers and sisters would go there as well. It was around this time, too, that he got interested in becoming a boxer. He admired Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson, and excuse me. And one of the highlights of his life was to appear on the same card as Joe Louis at the Olympia. And you see his name at the top and Joe Louis's name at the bottom. This was in 1948 when he was 19 years old. The Olympia was located on Grand River, ironically not that far from where Hitsville would be later. And here you see the Olympia Stadium here. And I remember once seeing Isaac Hayes there. They would have concerts there as well, and the Beatles would later perform there also. And on this map, you'll see where it was located. In the upper right-hand corner, you see Hitsville or the Motown Museum, and at Dobble's African Bead Museum at the lower left corner. He would practice at the Brewster Wheeler Center, which was about 5 miles away from their home. And this is the gym that he practiced in, as well as Joe Louis trained in. And these pictures were taken after the building was abandoned. They had a swimming pool there, as well as basketball court. And in 1949, when at the age of 20, Color magazine would come out to their home and interview them and do a spread on them. And you see him on the left at the piano with the family around him. His mother's brother had taught him how to play piano when they were still living on the west side. In 1951, he was drafted, served 2 years in Korea, and when he got out in 1953, he opened the 3D record mart with his brother George here, and which was not successful. And he met Thelma Coleman, and they got married and had 3 children in very short order, one after the other, a year apart. Her mother found him a job at the Ford Foundry, and after only 1 day, he quit because of the conditions there, and he came home and coughed up black matter. She got him another job at Lincoln Mercury. That worked out, and he stayed there for 2 years because it allowed him to write songs while he was doing breaks. He bought a house at this address, and they lived downstairs, and there were 2 flats upstairs. And with that amount of money, allowed him to have a $40 profit. In the mid-50s, he quit his job and started becoming a songwriter full-time and hanging out on the John R. Strip which you see just below the Cultural Center on the map. That would be between Canfield and Forest on John R. And you see where the red X is where he lived, where the family lived, I should say. And these are some of the clubs that were located on the John R. Strip. The Frolic Bar, the Chesterfield Lounge, the Garfield Lounge. The most famous one was the Flame Show Bar, which was on John R. and Canfield. And big time entertainers would appear there, like Dinah Washington, Sarah Vaughan, Sam Cooke, Nina Simone. And he had an in with hanging out there because his two of his sisters, Anna and Gwen, ran a photography concession there. And here you see him with Billie Holiday and his brothers on the left, Brother Robert's on the left. You have Billie Holiday and you have Mabel John and Cecil Allen on the right. And of course, Billie Holiday was famous for this particular song, Strange Fruit, and Mabel John for Your Good Thing Is About to Come to an End. She had attended Lewis Business College and also worked for Barry's mother at the insurance company. Now here's a picture of Anna, Gordy, and his sister Gwen. And they, as I said, they ran the photo concession stand. And he met this young man, Roquel Davis, Billy Davis, or Tyron Carlo. He had 3 different names he went by, but they started writing together, and he was going with Barry's sister Gwen, and they wrote Lonely Teardrops for Jackie Wilson and Reet Petite. Both were monster hits. Here's Reet Petite. This was the first one, and later Lonely Teardrops. And they wrote several more for him, about 5. And his manager, Nate, or Nat rather, That's Why is another one. I'll Be Satisfied. And they won an award for the lyrics from BMI for Lonely Teardrops. And you see Barry here with his parents and Anna on the left and Jackie in the center. Remember, subscribe to the channel down below. In 1957, William Smokey Robinson and his entire group, the Matadors, walked into Jackie Wilson's manager's office at the Flame Show Bar to audition. But the manager didn't like them. He said they were too much like the Platters and rejected them. It just so happened that Berry Gordy was in the office. After the audition, he approached Smokey and asked to see his song book that he had in his hand. And he patiently listened to a lot of his songs and read a lot of them. And from that point on, they formed a relationship, and Gordy started to mentor him in terms of fine-tuning his songwriting. In 1958, Barry was served with divorce papers by his wife Thelma, and he moved back to the St. Antoine building and lived upstairs. Out of that experience of divorce, he wrote To Be Loved for Jackie Wilson, with help from Davis and his sister Gwen. Now, they were having trouble getting their songwriting royalties, and when they did get them, they had to be split 3 ways. They were also having problems with Jackie Wilson's manager because they wanted to have a recording on the B side as well as the A side that they were writing for. And he refused. What the manager would do was he would get a relative of his to record the B side. And so what that meant was when the record was sold, any songwriting royalties had to be split 50-50, and they wanted the whole record for themselves. But he refused, and so they quit and started writing for independent artists like Brian Holland sing here, Lamont Dozier, and Eddie Dozier. And all three of them were singers. And as you may know, they became the famous Holland Dozier Holland songwriters and producers. And once Motown got out of the way, they also recorded with independent artists like David Ruffin, Melvin Franklin, and Ty Hunter, seen here. Billy Davis and Gwen decided they wanted to start their own record company and asked Barry to join with them, but he said no, he wanted to do his own thing. And so they formed Anna Records and named it after Gwen's sister, Anna. They would bring in several talented people to work with them. Two of them were Marvin Gaye and Harvey Fuqua. Now, Marvin was 19 years old at the time and was singing with the Moonglows. You see him here on the left with Anna, and Harvey Fuqua is on the right with Gwen. She and Billy Davis eventually broke up, and she would later marry Harvey, and of course Gaye would marry Anna. Now, Harvey Fuqua would become very instrumental once Motown got underway in creating what became known as the Motown sound. Berry Gordy's new lady in his life was Ramona Miles, and she was an incredibly talented young lady. She had perfect pitch. She was a background singer. She could write lead sheets. She could do chord arrangements, and she and Barry started the Ray Burr Voices and the Ray Burr Music Writing Company, which was a contraction of both of their names. And they were living together when he approached his family about the famous $800 loan. This is a copy of the famous $800 loan contract that he signed in January 1959. In the upper right-hand corner, you could see Burr-Berry Co-op, 5139 St. Antoine, and the date is January 12, 1959. In the middle of the document, you see where the rate of interest will be 6%, and lower down, you see the amount of interest will be $48, and you can see the address at 1719 Gladstone. That's where he was living at the time, and this is the location today. It's a vacant lot. And when Tamla started, this was Tamla's address on the records. And as you can see here in this diagram, the address wasn't that far from where Hitsfield was finally located. And it was Ray Nona, who found the location on the boulevard. In 1959, he also established a publishing company, which grew to over 15,000 copyrights. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel and press that thumbs up button. Marv Johnson provided Barry with his first song on his first label. The name of the song was Come to Me, and it was recorded in 1959 at United Sound Studios on 2nd Street, just north of Wayne State University. Black radio was very important during this time to get the records out to the community. The first station was WJLB, with disc jockeys like Frantic Ernie Durham, Jolton Joe Howard, and Senator Bristol Bryant, and others. The second station was WCHB, which was black owned, and the disc jockeys there that were very high profile was George Price, Donnie Brooks, Butterball, who I love listening to, and there was Martha Jean the Queen, and Ed Love, and several others. The Miracles provided Berry Gordy's new company with several firsts during those early years. The first song released on Motown label was Bad Girl by the Miracles. The very first record distributed nationally by the company was Way Over There. And also the very first million seller was recorded by the Miracles in 1960, and that was Shop Around. Of course, today, the building that Raynona Miles found in 1959 on the boulevard is now the Motown Museum, which opened in 1985. She and Barry did marry in 1960, and the same year that the company was incorporated. Motown Records was incorporated in April 1960. There were several factors that contributed to Berry Gordy becoming one of the most important independent record company owners. First, of course, there was his work ethic. He worked very hard at his craft. He surrounded himself with very intelligent, talented people. He gained control of the means of production. He developed his own studio complex, pressing plants. He developed his own distribution company, his own publishing company, so he didn't have to rely on other companies to achieve his success. And of course, his family. Berry Gordy's mother and father provided positive images for him and his siblings to model after. Both parents started several businesses, and they exhibited the benefits of hard work. In addition, they modeled the importance of having fun as a family. They had a family bowling team, and which was award-winning, and in fact, Fuller became a professional bowler. They also went horseback riding as a family, and Gwen and Lucy were the best, and Lucy started the Bit and Spurs Riding Club. They went to church 3 times a week and all day on Sunday. And in addition to learning about religious education, they were members of the Booker T. Washington Trade Association and the Housewives League, and which was founded there by Reverend Peck and his wife Fannie Peck. And both organizations championed ownership and self-reliance. Videos about the Booker T. Washington Trade Association and the Housewives League of Detroit can be viewed on this channel after you finish viewing this one. Esther Gordy Edwards was a Cass High School, Howard University graduate. She founded the Burberry Co-op, was a co-founder of the Gordy Printing Company. She founded the Motown Review, which we call the Motown Review, in 1962. And she founded the Motown Museum in 1985, which receives about 40,000 visitors a year. At Motown Corporation, she became vice president of the International Talent Management Company. Her husband, George Edwards, who was a state legislator and an accountant, became head of finance. Lucy, prior to her tragic death at age 40 of a brain hemorrhage, was head of sales promotion, distribution, pressing plants, shipping, billing, collections, and publishing. George was a business owner before he joined the company as a co-writer on several songs. Fuller was vice president of corporate affairs and was involved with philanthropic ventures and community endeavors. He was instrumental in shaping the administrative and organizational policies of the company. He also was in charge of personnel and purchasing. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. Robert replaced Lucy as head of the music publishing company. Sister Anna was a songwriter before joining the company, and she continued to do so afterwards. She and her sister Gwen convinced Barry to allow them to start an artist development department, and he agreed, and they both headed that department. And she continued writing songs. She wrote for people such as Mary Wells, Stevie Wonder, Joe Tex, David Ruffin, and she even wrote a few songs on Marvin Gaye's seminal album, What's Going On. Gwen was also a songwriter, And she married Harvey Fuqua in 1961, and they founded Tri-Fi Records and Harvey Records. And those two labels, plus Anna Records, which she co-founded, were both absorbed. All three were absorbed by Motown. And she and her sister Gwen headed the artist development department at Motown. Today it's a sorority building across the street from Motown. And it consisted of Maxine Powell, who you see working with Florence Ballard here, who taught the artists social graces, poise, and etiquette, and Charlie Atkins, who was the staff choreographer, who you see working here with the Four Tops. In 1972, Hitsville moved downtown to this building, which was located near where Little Caesars Arena now stands. In this 1991 photo, you see the 7 remaining siblings. Lucy had died in 1965. On the left, you see Fuller, then Gwen, Barry, Esther, Robert, Anna, and George. Only Barry and Robert are still with us. Pop Gordy passed in 78 and Mother Gordy in 75. In February 2021, I visited St. Antoine and Farnsworth, where the Gordy family lived, and what I found is a housing complex there now. The sign that Barry set atop would have been to the left, closer to the street, and the family church 1 block away, where their parents renewed their vows in 1969, has been demolished. You see Diana Ross looking on as Fuller walks his mother down the aisle, and you see Diana Ross to the right here with Barry and Esther at the top of the stairs as their parents leave. This is a vacant lot where the church stood, and apparently there's going to be more housing built, and evidenced by the sign. Across the street is Dunbar Hospital, which was a black hospital in this area. It was one of 8, and there's a video on this channel about those 8 hospitals. In the background is the Bertha Hansberry Music School, which was one of 3 independent black-owned schools, and there's a video about those schools as well. And here's the elementary school that Barry and Robert attended. It's just 2 blocks from where the church stood on St. Antoine and Ferry. And this school is the only tangible artifact that involved the Gordys that is now standing. And it just seems to me that there should be some type of historical marker at some of these sites. What do you think? Leave a comment down below, and press the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.